Hello and welcome to the first episode of the series where I will take a look at every single classic Eaglemoss figurine and discussing what I think hopefully should also be released before the series comes to a complete and utter end. So in this episode we will be taking a close look at the figures in front of you here today, and as I mentioned I will be talking and discussing about possible ideas for future releases. So let's get into this. So starting off with the Unearthly Child, the very first Doctor Who story to be broadcast, of course, way back on November 23rd, 1963. Now for the releases from that story, we have the Companions of the First Doctor set, including, of course, the First Doctor himself, Susan Foreman, Ian Chesterton, and Barbara Wright. This was a companion set, so as I mentioned, all four of these figures came within just one set. Same set, but this time in black and white, and I have that one here too. So that is the first story, the Unearthly Child. Let's take a look at the very next story, which of course is the Daleks. So as mentioned, here is the Dalek from the story The Daleks. I have army built these Daleks and I've got quite a few of them, but for the purposes of this video I will just be showing you the one from each particular story. So as I mentioned, of course they're going to release the Daleks. It's just natural, Daleks are good sellers, Daleks sell. Now we move on to the Edge of Destruction. Now technically the Edge of Destruction is one of those very funny Doctor Who stories because it doesn't really have much going on. It just has 2 episodes in the TARDIS of the Companions and the First Doctor. So what I would suggest, perhaps they just released maybe another set of the First Doctor and his 3 companions, Susan, Barbara and Ian, but just in, you know, a different outfit perhaps. I can't even remember what they wore in that story, to be honest with you, but it's a get around. Now, as you can see, they also released the TARDIS console from the First Doctor's era. They also released this in black and white. So let's pretend this is from the Edge of Destruction, and then we get away with it. We get a figure or a item from that story. Now we move on to a Marco Polo, where no figures exist at the moment, but of course, let's just go out there and have them release Marco Polo himself, just to sit alongside our lovely Doctor and his companions. Ben moves us on swiftly to the Keys of Marinus, where we do actually have a Vord. Not played by Carol Ann Ford, may I say, but we do have a Vord nonetheless, which is really cool. I would have loved to have army built these guys. I think they're fantastic. They are quite an unknown villain in Doctor Who world because they only showed up once, but let's have them return in the new series perhaps, and then Character Options may also release these lovely things. Now we move on to the Aztecs, of course. Let's have that. I can't remember his name, but the guy with a paint strip across his mouth and the crazy headgear. Let's get him released and let's have him as a figure. Then we move on to the Sensorites, and of course we do have a Sensorite from this figure. I always think that the feet at the bottom look like blobs of blue tack. It always makes me laugh, even when I actually watch the story itself, but nonetheless we have a Sensorite. And then we have the First Doctor from the Reign of Terror. Now, it kind of is a shame that he isn't in his French get-up gear, but nonetheless, this technically is from the story The Reign of Terror, so that is another box that we can get ticked. Then we move on to Planet of the Giants, which is potentially, again, a difficult story because there isn't like a villain per se, although there are a few human characters that are, you know, baddies if you like, but I don't know, maybe they could have a giant cat or something like that. I don't know. It's a difficult one for Planet of the Giants, but I'm sure they could come up with something. Maybe a shrunken TARDIS, perhaps. Then we move on to the Dalek invasion of Earth, where not only do we have a drone Dalek, but we have the Saucer Commander Dalek as well. And I mean, what's more to say? These Daleks are amazing, and the more Daleks you can get in your collection, quite frankly, the better. And then we move on to the Rescue, and it surprises me that we have Quillian, and I absolutely love this character. I think it's brilliant. Of course, the story of the Rescue introduces Vicky as well, so perhaps we could get a release of Vicky in the near future as well. I think that would be absolutely amazing. The next story is the Romans, and again, Not so easy. I mean, they could release Season Zero, but I think it would be better to release perhaps Ian and Barbara in their Roman costumes. I think that would be absolutely awesome. And then we move on to the Web Planet, and of course we have Wasabi looking absolutely menacing and just incredible. I have army built these to my heart's content, but we haven't got the Menoptera, which is crazy to think. We need the Butterfly Men on the Eaglemoss collections, so let's get those on there as well. Then we move on to the Crusade, which potentially you could get Julian Glover's character dressed up in his Crusade gear. And then we move on to the Space Museum, which you could argue we have a set from the Space Museum. It's right in front of you. It's invisible. Yeah, it doesn't wash, does it? But again, what about having those guys that run around in the black suits? I think that would be kind of cool. And then we have the Chase, which obviously includes not only the Mechanoid, which was a special issue, but also the Electrode Dalek looking pretty awesome. It would be nice to have some standard Daleks from the Chase as well to sit alongside this one, but who knows? Neil Corey, if you're watching this, make it happen, my man. And then we have the Time Meddler, which of course we have the Meddling Monk, thank goodness, a fantastic story, really love that one. The Meddling Monk actually came in a release of the Time Lord series alongside Eric Roberts' Master, so yeah, the Time Meddler, sorted. Then we have Galaxy 4, where of course we could have a Chumley, or a Jarvan. Are they called Jarvans? I think they are. But yeah, a Chumley would be an amazing addition to the collection. Then we move on to Mission to the Unknown. Let's just have maybe a Dalek, or Brett Vine is in that story, I believe. Let's get him on there. Then we have the Mythmakers, which potentially could be a release of Vicky and a Trojan Horse, clutching at straws at this point. Then we move on to the Daleks' Master Plan, including not only the Supreme Dalek himself, but the Pyro Flame Dalek as well. So we're pretty much covered on the Dalek's Master Plan side, although it would be nice to have a Mavic Chen in the collection. Then we move on to the Massacre, which is a real difficult story, because I haven't even seen that story, to be honest with you, because it doesn't exist. I haven't seen the recons, but I'm sure we could have maybe a variant of perhaps the First Doctor, perhaps. Just stick it in there. And then we have the story The Ark, which we are thankfully ticking another box, because we have a Monoid. This is number one Monoid. So he's the leader of the Monoids. I really like The Ark, by the way. Good story. Then a recent addition, we have the Celestial Toymaker from the Celestial Toymaker. So we're kind of covered on that story. If we release Stephen, we may as well also release Dodo, and we may as well go ahead and release Katarina and also Sarah Kingdom, just to complete the classic companions perfectly. Then we move on to the Gunfighters. Perhaps we could have Doc Holliday released. I don't think that's ever going to happen, but who knows. And then the Savages is another difficult one, but we could have some of those Savages, perhaps. And then we move on to the War Machines. Of course, I've only just recently built an army of these beautiful, beautiful War Machines, so I think we're covered on the War Machine front. Then we have the story The Smugglers, which we could just have maybe a standard pirate kind of released. And then we move on to the 10th planet. Of course, we have a Cyberman from that story, the 10th planet, so we've pretty much got that one covered. Excellent. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this episode. This is the first episode of, well, 7. So we're going to be taking a look at every single Doctor from 1st to 7. In this series of videos. Of course, as we get further into the run, especially into the 70s and 80s, there is going to be a lot to get through. So stick with me, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, smash a like on this video so I know you're enjoying it, and I will see you all again for another Doctor Who video very soon here on my channel. Thank you to everyone for watching another one of my Doctor Who videos. I fucking love you all. I do want to say a massive thank you to my VIP patrons of Mark Thomas, Chris TJ, Sammy the Dalek and Ben Taylor. And also thank you so much to all of my other patrons, Cybershade1, Boston Stew, Ryan Costa, Dalek Boss, Jeff316, James Griffin, Andrew23, Third Dr. John, Tiny Tower Kid, Flawless Reactor, Time Kid 88, Cyber Daleks, Gary Humbert, Simon Taylor, Penny and Amber, Samson Cole and Bev Richards. Thank you all so much for your contributions. You guys are helping keep this channel alive.